Okay, we gotta talk about the Dallas Mavericks because I was not expecting it to be this bad. Now, as we all know, last year, Dallas pulled off the trade of all trades, shipping off the face of the franchise, future Hall of Famer, already all-time great Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers, and in return, received Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and some draft compensation. Now, me personally, I certainly leaned more on the side of being a bit speculatory and had my doubts. I had a hard time believing that this roster offensively was going to be competent enough to really make deep postseason runs, since the large majority of the personnel on this team were play finishers and you took away the all-time great playmaker. Nevertheless, there were certainly some people that felt very optimistic about what the team could look like moving forward just off their defense alone. But then the injuries hit. First Anthony Davis, then PJ Washington, but the biggest blow of them all, Kyrie Irving sidelined not only for the rest of the regular season, but a huge portion of the upcoming year due to an ACL injury. So then a lot of people really started to question what exactly was Nico thinking, because you really put yourself at a bit of a pickle here. And then just like that, the NBA gods, for whatever reason, decide to favor Nico Harrison and give him the #1 overall pick, in which the Mavericks selected Cooper Flagg. And then just like that, bada boom, bada bang, more people started to be highly optimistic about what this team could look like once Kyrie was back fully healthy, and they truly believed that the Dallas Mavericks, when everything was said and done, could really push for title contending status. And yet here we are now, the first 4 games of the season, and trust me when I say they are far, and I mean far removed for where many people thought they were going to be. So far, the Dallas Mavericks have a record of 1-3 with the worst offense in the NBA, and defensively, even though it is above league average, it certainly has not been able to reach the heights in which many people anticipated. And if the record in offense isn't bad enough, it got so bad against a loss against the Washington Wizards that Dallas Mavericks fans were already chanting, "Fire Nico." However, there are still very clear problems that this roster will face moving forward that were very easy and clear to identify even before the season began, and I don't necessarily know how fixable they are, rather than actually being true characteristic traits of who this roster actually is. So far, the Mavericks have struggled on the defensive side of the floor. Even though they are creeping and improving, they still haven't reached top 10 status. I certainly believe that's going to be fixable, because when I watch some of these games, there's a lot of overreacting and not trusting one another on that side of the ball, and I do believe that will be improved as time continues to progress. Now, I can already hear the criticism being typed away in the comment section. How dare I make a video after a 4-game sample size when 2 of the games were against the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs, 2 teams that already look like they're going to be some of the best teams in the entire league. Should I not give them more chances and more opportunity to prove who they actually are as a unit? And you know what? You're absolutely right. Actually, I'm going to go as far as to say that some of the things that really do push this unit to struggle offensively are not going to be consistent themes throughout this season. For example, both D'Angelo Russell and Klay Thompson to start this year cannot hit the side of a barn. Klay Thompson is shooting 28 to 29% on his long ball shots. D'Lo is shooting even worse at 17%. Also, D'Lo is having a hard time finishing at the basket. I believe he's only made like 2 layups so far this year. So yes, there are certain things that are occurring that lends itself to a result of the worst offense in the NBA that will not be reoccurring themes as the seasons progress, especially with those 2 players who we all know are very streaky, and that's all understandable. For example, the most glaring problem that the Dallas Mavericks face is their passing, playmaking, and overall point guard play. Now, we knew this was going to be a problem heading into the season once you traded Luka and then Kyrie being sidelined for a huge portion of the year due to the ACL injury. But I'm going to be honest with you, I did not think it was going to be this bad, in large part because I did not think that Jason Kidd was going to experiment this much. Early on this year, the turnovers have piled up at a ridiculous rate, and practically any analytic that you can point to measure how impactful a team is in terms of their assists, turnover rate, no matter what it is, then more than likely the Dallas Mavericks are towards the bottom 10. PJ Washington had a near career high turnovers against the Washington Wizards. It hasn't looked that great for Anthony Davis early on either, but then you even have certain players such as Derek Lively and Nembhard who barely touch the ball and are still turning the ball over at a ridiculous rate. Now, with all that being said, there is some good news because some of this can be fixed by just starting D'Angelo Russell. During the preseason, I thought Cooper Flagg being a point guard was going to be like a cute little experiment that Jason Kidd was going to try here and there. No. Jason Kidd has decided to full on go with Cooper Flagg and Klay Thompson as his starting backcourt mate, and that is ridiculous. I've already said in my Cooper Flagg video, I am not that high on who he is offensively, and even though I thoroughly understand the idea of putting the ball in his hands and let him getting some reps and letting him develop as a passer and playmaker may be necessary for a 19-year-old who could find himself on a roster sooner than later that will need all of the offensive repertoire that he could potentially provide to a team, I can see that working favorable for his development, but I do think there's definitely more tactical ways to improve him in those regards, especially when he's more than likely always going to be maximized playing next to a serviceable point guard at bare minimum who can at least help him in some capacities with passing and playmaking responsibilities. But these are things that we are anticipating that is going to happen, and optimistically, when he's like in his mid to late 20s, maybe 30s, not when he's 19 years old and getting his first NBA reps in. Jason Kidd, just start D'Angelo Russell. The numbers point this out as well. Even when D'Lo is having terrible shooting performances, and he's been really bad, bro, the offense just looks significantly better when D'Lo is on the floor, and it looks significantly worse when he is off the floor. You do not have enough passer playmakers, table setters, for you to find any excuse to not put D'Lo on the floor. It just does not make any sense whatsoever. So just play D'Lo. You can still grow Cooper Flagg as a passer and playmaker while he still plays alongside D'Angelo Russell. You can do both. However, even as I say that though, I am still fully aware of who D'Lo is as a passer, as a playmaker, as a point guard, as a table setter, as someone who can generate really good looks for everyone else. And that can be the same thing said about Kyrie Irving as well. There is still a very clear cap on what this team will and will not look like in terms of generating quality looks, not only on ball for an individual, but as well as everyone else. And when you have a team that is filled with a bunch of play finishers, Gafford, Lively, Max Christie, Klay Thompson, even Anthony Davis, when he is performing at his absolute best, it's when he is a play finisher for someone who is a really great passer and playmaker. And as much as many of you all love Kyrie, A, he's coming back from an ACL injury, but B, and more importantly, even before that, Kyrie has had multiple opportunities to be an offensive hub for really talented offensive units, and he has never been able to consistently churn out top 10 offensive productivity. He just hasn't been able to do it. And this is again before ACL injury, before that. And y'all are somehow anticipating him to do it after an ACL injury? Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And oh yeah, I have heard some of the news about Anthony Davis being used as a hub, and I certainly love the idea of doing so because I saw a lot of that manifest itself out last year with the Lakers with JJ Redick. And I do believe that Anthony Davis has developed in those regards as well. But very similar to Kyrie and D'Angelo Russell, there is a very clear ceiling of what that can and cannot look like. But I just cannot see, even when Kyrie comes back, that this team offensively will get to a certain level to where it would fix all their flaws. The 30th ranked offense, absolutely not. But good enough to justify just building this team the way you have and think that it's going to be serviceable enough offensively, I just don't see it. At best, at absolute best, I think this team is going to be slightly above average. Slightly. And that's with me believing that Kyrie's going to have major impact on this roster. Another massive problem that I am seeing early on as well is the fit between Anthony Davis and Derek Lively. Overall, I think AD has had some really good moments early on this season, but I am pretty disappointed in how AD has approached this season. I know he's going to continue to get in shape. I know he's going to continue to lose a little bit more weight, but coming into a year where the player that they traded you for, the biggest criticism about him was his weight. You coming into the season not in the tip-top shape that we all know you can be in, while also begging and pleading with the Lakers to put you at the 4. You're now at the 4, but you put on weight as if like you're going to play the 5. It just does not make any sense. In preseason, he was moving a little sluggish. There's even been games where he still hasn't had the high defensive motor that we would all want him to have, especially when, again, you're playing the 4. But the overall offensive fit between him and Derek Lively, I'm just not a fan of. of. AD has moments where he's attempting significantly more threes than he did in prior years with the Lakers. He's hanging around the perimeter way more than I would want him to. I believe he's best suited as a low post big, maybe at the elbow, but obviously as a play finisher getting to the basket. It's already clear that who he is as a player may be capped off because he is not playing next to someone like a LeBron James, or even if we get some glimpses of who he was back in New Orleans, he's just not the same athlete that he was when he was in his 20s. So I don't even necessarily know if we can get back to that version of AD. But Davis as a shot creator, a mid-range jump shot shooter, someone who you have to rely on his ability to, expect some range out of him, that's just not his best playing style. That's not who he is as a player. And I've seen it as a Laker fan go in and out all throughout his time with the Lakers when he was playing at the 5, and he had practically three-point shooting around him at every single position. Defensively, I think he'll be better, but I just don't think it's going to look that great on the offensive side of the floor. And again, completely disappointing in AD coming into this season out of shape. But the biggest problem that the Dallas Mavericks face that I don't think they can genuinely fix are injuries. Daniel Gafford was already sidelined in the beginning of the season. Knee contusion now has Derek Lively questionable with his availability, and I can't even make this up. As I'm recording this video, news just broke that Anthony Davis is now dealing with an Achilles injury. An Achilles injury. Bro, I don't know how much worse it could get for the Mavericks. And also, this is a big reason why I'm so disappointed in AD, bro. You know you're injury prone. You know this has been a problem with you your entire career. Why would you come into season out of shape knowing what is at risk? That is so frustrating to me. But even in a much wider lens, bro, it is crazy to believe how much faith people have in modern medicine that they believe that Kyrie Irving in his 30s coming off of an ACL injury is going to come back 1 year removed and somehow be impactful enough to help this team reach title contending status. Do y'all see how crazy that sounds? In recent memory, there's only 2 guards that come to mind that were able to come back after an ACL injury and still perform really well. Those 2 guards are Jamal Murray and Zach LaVine, and even then, the recovery time for both of those players to get back to the performance that we saw them prior took over a year and a half. But somehow, many people have convinced themselves that Kyrie Irving is going to come back within a year's time, play at such levels that it will catapult this Mavericks team into title contention status. Do you understand how dumb that is? Do you understand how stupid that sounds, dog? That's dumb. That makes absolutely no sense. And I'm gonna be honest with you, actually, what might be the biggest problem with the Dallas Mavericks may not be injuries, may not be shooting, may not be ball handling. It's just expectations. Nico Harrison has put a battery in the back of this team that is functionally so flawed. I don't know how anyone could really believe that they truly have a 2 to 3 year window that just doesn't make any sense. And so now the expectations are so high that many of you all believe that Cooper Flagg, a 19-year-old rookie, has the ability to be the second or third most important offensive player on this roster, that Anthony Davis is not only going to stay healthy, but also shoot well enough to justify him playing at a power forward position, that you then believe that Kyrie Irving is going to come back from an ACL injury and help this team out that is already showing signs of being really, really bad offensively. And everything is going to come together in this steep, competitive, ridiculously high ceiling of a Western Conference. You all really think that's going to happen? That might actually be the biggest problem, are the expectations. They're ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense, and quite frankly, it is unfair. Now look, even with all that being said, my predictions of what this team is going to look like by the end of the season still hasn't changed. 44, 45 win team, at most fringe 50 win season coming up. But in all honesty, the way in which they're starting off this year, looking at their schedule throughout the end of November, beginning of February, it's still going to be really tough. And even that may have been a bit too optimistic of what this team can accomplish. But the only thing I ask of many people, regardless of what Nico Harrison claimed he's going to do, let's tone it down a little bit with the expectations. Let's acknowledge that this is a roster that was built around an all-time great playmaker, a bunch of play finishers who are really good defensively, but you took away that playmaker, and more than likely offensively, this roster is just never going to reach the heights to justify put them in OKC territory or against the Denver Nuggets, Golden State Warriors, heck, at this point, maybe not even the San Antonio Spurs. Let's acknowledge that those expectations might be a bit too steep for this team. Or maybe I'm just overreacting to the first 4 games. You let me know in the comment section below. I do know this is a really bad start to the season, but hey, Let me hear your thoughts. Also hit the subscribe button and notification bell. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.